All right, good Friday morning. Good to be with you today. Missed last week thanks to you were just gone blank. Thanks to a field trip with Grayson. But I just want to share real briefly with you from First Peter chapter 2. And do you ever think about the way you respond when you're mistreated? Now, you may be different than me. Maybe you've never been mistreated in your entire life. But I think we need to realize that when that does happen, as most of us have been mistreated at some point, the world is watching how we react when we're mistreated. And so the way we respond says a lot about our character and our faith, and it says way more than we probably ever really realize. And so we need to make sure that we're aware of that. And when we do face difficulties, when we do face maybe being mistreated, that we honor Christ and that we point others to Him instead of the other way. Well, they see how we act or we react, and people don't want to be any part of that. And so basically what happens here in First Peter is the believers, the church is booming, the gospel is spreading. The Roman leaders and political leaders, they basically get nervous about this new belief that's going around, the Jewish leaders as well. And so they decide that Christianity and all the followers of Jesus are public enemy number one, essentially. So they were persecuted, they were beaten, they were arrested. Jerusalem, where thousands upon thousands of believers had grown and matured in faith, they were no longer safe in Jerusalem. And so they scattered all around the known world, and some began quietly practicing their beliefs in their new home, and others were maybe perhaps contemplating whether this was really something that they needed to be doing because they were scared. And that is why Peter wrote this. That is exactly why Peter wanted to have this, and why the Holy Spirit led Peter to say this. And the people, it's early sometimes. The people that Peter wrote 1 Peter 4 were used to being punished and persecuted, and for what seemed no reason at all. And I'm sure that they were angry, and I'm sure that there was a case where some of them were ready to fight. And I think that is a lot of times our first reaction when someone does something to us is we're ready to fight. Now, is there a time and place for fighting? Yeah. If someone's trying to hurt my children or take my life, I'm probably going to fight. I can assure you, if someone's going after my kids, I'm going to fight. But in chapter 2, Peter reminds them that they need to make sure that they are handling that correctly, that it not only affects them, that it affects the future of the church. And so he starts out with kind of a general reminder to them in 1 Peter chapter 2, looking in verses 16 and 17. It says, "Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. Honor the emperor." And he says, basically, these times are very, very difficult. That's not an excuse to mistreat people. And this is kind of like that basic golden rule stuff that we learn so young, is treat people the way we want to be treated, even if they aren't treating us in that way. He throws in something here. It says, "Live as God's slaves," and certainly when you read that having studied history and look at what happened here in the United States with slavery and everything else, and what this is not is saying that slavery is okay. No, what it is that we should live as God's slaves. Is that we do exactly what He says to do. We're children of God. We're followers of God. Galatians even says that we're friends of God. But we typically don't always see ourselves as slaves of God. It's a difficult thing to understand, but Peter is essentially saying these followers of Jesus are free to do as they will, but they need to remember that they're representing God in every single thing they do, especially to those who don't know Him. And so Peter continues by addressing actual slaves in the next verse. He says, slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh, for it is commendable if someone bears up under the pain of unjust suffering, because they are conscious of God. And so this is one of those passages that unfortunately people have tried to twist in the past, say that slavery was okay. That's not what it says. What it is saying is he's talking to believers who find themselves as slaves. He's telling them how to act. And so we represent Christ no matter who we're responding to, whether it is a master. Now, fortunately, none of us that I'm probably speaking to are working that way, but we do have bosses. We do have, teachers. If we're a student, we do have people who are in charge of us. And the way we respond to them, especially if they are being unfair to us, is like a giant billboard we can walk around and show everybody how we react, whether we realize it or not. When we roll our eyes and refuse to do what we've been asked to do. Not that I ever see anyone roll their eyes as a youth pastor. Never. Or as a dad. But we need to understand that we show people our faith by the way we respond. We show them that our faith, if we respond negatively, we show them that our faith doesn't reach there, that our faith doesn't control that situation. And so we need to make sure that we understand that God has the power to make things right in his time, and that he is in control of every single situation we find ourselves in. That is so difficult for us sometimes. And so we need to understand that we're representing God in a way that points to his love, it points to his grace in our life, and it shows them that we know we can trust God with our future. And Peter is not encouraging people to be indifferent towards injustice in the world, and he was not advocating for them to sit back and allow other people to be abused. He wasn't telling them not to defend themselves. And this long line of things that people try to twist and make these verses say, he was telling them to respond with respect and dignity, even if they weren't treated with respect and dignity. We can stand up for people and handle it the right way. We can defend ourselves and still honor God in the way we do it. And anyone can stand strong when things are going well, and most people will accept their consequences when they deserve them, I think. But Peter's encouraging Christians to do more than what most people would do. Sometimes we fall into this trap of, I would handle it this way. And, why would you say that? Why would you show them respect when they don't? There's no way I would show them respect. And we go, oh, well, yeah, maybe I should do that way then too. And so Peter is encouraging Christians to do what most people won't do. And that is to stand strong in our faith when things are difficult. He goes on in verses 20 and 21, but how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. And so people knew that the people who were reading this letter were not being treated fairly. They may have been facing persecution for simply being a believer. And for that thing, Peter's saying, hey, you're guilty. If you're going to be convicted of serving the Lord, then take that punishment because you're being faithful. That's commendable before God. And that's what he wants them to understand, is he didn't tell them that they should demand fair treatment. He didn't tell them they should riot or protest. He reminded them that people were watching to see what their response would be, and that they should stand strong and trust the Lord to make things right. Does that mean that our timing of what we think should be made right is the same as God's? No, it's not. And that's the hard thing about faith and trust. Far too often we throw fits about mistreatment. We need to make sure that we are standing strong and we honor Christ and we point others to them. And this also goes when things don't go well for us. And and maybe things don't go as planned for us. People see how we respond, and we don't always respond well when things go poorly. But we need to make sure that people understand that no matter what we face, no matter what happens to us, that we trust the Lord. Are you going to do that today? That's my challenge for you. No matter what we face, no matter what's going on, that we trust the Lord with everything in our hearts. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. For some of you, it'll be a longer holiday weekend. Hope you stay safe, enjoy some time with family, and hope to see all of you on Sunday. May God bless.